We can't retreat. As soon as someone suggested retreating, Moro immediately stopped them. We can't let Kether's sacrifice be in vain. Besides, I have the strategist's plan, he thought carefully. The strategist's tactics would suffice even against a late-stage Level 2 civilization, slightly stronger than them, not to mention an early-stage Level 2 one. After all, in a situation where both sides are blind, they could easily infiltrate within 1,000,000 kilometers of Earth if they split their forces. As long as one warship penetrates, the war is won. Captain, what did the strategist say to you in the infirmary? Someone couldn't help but ask, unsure of what was happening. Secrets of heaven must not be disclosed. Moro shook his head, not intending to reveal anything. After a moment, he said, "You all rest assured, the strategist's plan is absolutely flawless. Even if this Pangu civilization possesses late-stage Level 2 technological level, they will certainly perish." People looked at each other, somewhat incredulous. The enemy has hundreds of thousands of warships, while we have only 100. These are all minor issues. Didn't the 9 warships of the 10th Fleet take down tens of thousands of the enemy's warships? Moro dismissed the doubts, stating, "Everything is still within controllable range. Once the engineering ships are ready, you all will depart to support the front lines." After finishing, he asked, "Any news from Seth?" "Not yet. It will take at least 3 more hours. I hope they've managed to get information on the enemy robots' rules." "Commander, let's retreat quickly." At the temporary base in the asteroid belt, all the captains of the fleets began to urge. The enemy is clearly hiding their technological level. They're already at the early stage of Level 2 now. Who knows if they have mid-stage or even late-stage Level 2 technology? Exactly. The technology level from Level 1 to Level 2 is difficult to breach. It might not be possible even in 10,000 years. But from the early stage of Level 2 to the mid-stage, only needs a few hundred years? Seth was also a bit hesitant. Seeing this, Moreau at his side furiously said, "You are quite daring. Who dares to retreat without my brother's orders?" "Lord Moreau, it's not that we are afraid to die. It's just that the enemy's strength now greatly exceeds our previous understanding. If we continue with the previous combat plan, I'm afraid we might be defeated here. Yes, this time. If it weren't for the 10th Fleet risking their lives, our entire fleet would likely have been doomed." Many of the captains present felt fortunate. Thankfully, Moro was stubborn back then and had Kether break through. Otherwise, if any of them had been there, they would be dead. In fact, some captains even felt a bit of schadenfreude, thinking that with Kether dead, Moro must be heartbroken. "Well, I don't care. I am also a deputy commander. Can I manage you? Without my brother's orders, no one is allowed to retreat. The daily scheduled attacks must not stop." Moreau said this and turned to look at Seth, saying coldly, "Commander Seth, don't forget how you got here." Seth's expression changed slightly, and the hint of timidity in his heart gradually faded. He nodded. Even if the enemy has the level of an early-stage Level 2 civilization, they are still far behind us. How the war proceeds will be decided by the captain. As captains of our respective fleets, we should do our duty and follow orders. Until new instructions from Captain Moro arrive, everyone should act according to the original plan. Also, closely monitor the enemy's movements. If any ships leave the Mars defense line, report it immediately.
Heurt, Chia du Baz.
Senator Chu, are you really going to the moon? Senator Zhou was somewhat surprised. He thought Senator Chu would stay on Earth. After all, he had consolidated all of Earth. Given this opportunity, he could easily stand in the first position.
Yes.
Colonel Chu nodded, saying, "The moon has never openly recruited people. This time, they specifically want strategists with military skills, obviously wanting people from Earth to participate in this war. This is a significant breakthrough for us. We can get closer to the Panga civilization and understand more about the universe. We need more information to know how to proceed." Senator Sun couldn't help but say, "But you don't have to go personally. Can't we just send some people from the think tank?" Colonel Chu shook his head slightly. They can strategize, but when it comes to critical decisions, they ultimately lack confidence. Only if I go myself can one be at ease. Everyone understood his meaning. They were afraid that the strategists, not knowing how to choose in certain situations involving Earth, might harm the situation with good intentions. In that case, we won't try to persuade you anymore. With Senator Chu there, we will feel a bit more at ease. Senator Zhou thought for a moment and said, Senator Chu, now that Earth is integrated, did the chief administrator on the moon, Mr. Wu, say what we need to do? After thinking for a while, Senator Chu said, first, maintain the status quo and distribute some benefits within limits. The rest will be discussed later. Just then, a counselor rushed in excitedly, good news. The fleet that attacked Earth has been destroyed. What? Everyone quickly moved to the ground command center. After understanding the situation, they realized what had happened. The tactic of Moro's fleet is terrifying. They directly dragged down more than 10,000 warships. 10,000 warships, many people must have died, right? Also, on the Mars defense line, another 20,000 warships were destroyed. Altogether, maybe millions of people from the Panga civilization have died to protect us. The crowd had complex emotions, a feeling that was hard to express. We have always speculated about the actions of the Panga civilization with the utmost malice, but we never expected them to make such a huge sacrifice to protect the Earthlings. Several senators present felt a sense of shame. Don't feel too down, everyone. After all, we represent the Earth. Speculating with ill intent about the actions of the Panga civilization is our duty and our mission. Yes, one understand. It's just that this feeling of guilt will linger with me for a long time. Senator Sun turned to Colonel Chu and said, when you go to the moon, remember to mention to them that if they trust us, we can recruit soldiers from the Earth. Even if they go to the front lines, it's possible. Yes, protecting the Earth shouldn't mean only their people have to die. Colonel Chu nodded and said, I know. If one get the chance, I will bring it up. At that moment, a spaceship landed outside the base. Before long, someone came to report, the Panga civilization has come to pick up the strategist to go to the moon. Wait a moment, we'll be right out. After Colonel Chu said those words, he looked at the people and said, the Earth now entrusts to all of you. With that, accompanied by a dozen strategists who were already prepared, he walked out together. Boarding the spaceship again, Colonel Chu's state of mind was entirely different. The first time he had traveled in a disc-shaped spaceship piloted by Zhao Yu, returning from overseas to Disya in just 2 minutes. It had genuinely astounded them. Back then, he was consumed by envy. The best way to describe his feeling would be green-eyed. Now, he was going to the moon as an advisor, without the panic he felt when he first saw aliens. When we get there, you focus on giving advice and making plans. I'll handle the rest, he said. The strategists around Colonel Chu were all young people, most of them just promoted out of the norm and added to the think tank that day. Thank you for the reminder, Senator Chu. Don't call me Senator Chu anymore. I stopped being a counselor when I left the Earth. While they were talking, the spaceship had already reached the moon.
So fast?
Colonel Chu was surprised. Looking out the window, he found they were indeed already on the moon. Did it take less than 2 minutes to get to the moon? He was a bit incredulous. In the earliest times, a spaceship to the moon would need half a day to reach the Earth. Later, it was shortened to 1 hour and 40 minutes. Now, they could traverse 380,000 kilometers in just 2 minutes. It was unheard of. The spaceship docked at the spaceport. As the group looked around, a robot appeared, leading them to transfer to a magnetic levitation car. As the car descended to the ground, Colonel Chu and others finally saw the legendary Yuan City. It's so magnificent. They were all amazed. In their imagination, Yuan City was situated deep underground, within a massive steel structure. But the actual Yuan City was above ground, bustling with activity, a picture of tranquility. At the top of the city, a thin layer of light could be seen, a simulation of the atmosphere system. Just as they wondered if their office location was in Yuan City, the car took them away, slowly landing 100 kilometers away. On the ground, there stood a solitary building with the words Solar System Combat Command at the top. Outside this building, there was another thin film, with several humanoid figures waiting on the other side. Hiss dash. The car descended within the thin film, and the doors automatically opened. The people exchanged glances, and under Colonel Chu's lead, they stepped out of the car. Someone took a soft breath. The air was even fresher than on the blue planet. But Colonel Chu didn't bother with these. His gaze was directed at the row of figures, finding at the head of the line a familiar face, Zhao Yu. Behind Zhao Yu stood a row of robots. "Welcome." Zhao Yu greeted them with a smile. Seeing this, Colonel Chu quickly led his team forward, saying with a beaming smile, "Mr. Zhao Yu, we meet again. I hope all has been well." There were a few pleasantries exchanged. Zhao Yu got straight to the point. "I am the temporary commander of the Solar System Combat Command." Colonel Chu was shocked. He had assumed that Zhao Yu was there to greet them and take them to meet the Pangu people. Who would have known that Zhao Yu held the highest position in the Solar System Combat Command? Zhao Yu was originally from the Earth. Did the Pangu people trust him so much? "You will not be here for nothing." The role of an advisor in the Solar System Combat Command is equivalent to an L-level employee, and you will receive corresponding benefits. In addition to the dormitory provided by the Combat Command, I have also arranged houses for you in Yuan City, where you can stay during your time off. After giving everyone a quick tour of the command building and a brief introduction, Zhao Yu said, "Since you are new here, why not take some time to familiarize yourself with the environment and start work tomorrow?" "No need."
Colonel Chu, smiling.
"It only took us a few minutes to get here from the Earth. We are well rested and ready to start work." Zhao Yu nodded and led them to the command center. Upon entering the command center, Colonel Chu was surprised. The layout was entirely different from that on the Earth. There were no large screens or staff members. It looked more like a meeting room with a round table and chairs all around. "Please have a seat." Once everyone was seated, Zhao Yu casually tapped on the table. A hologram appeared, and a set of documents appeared in front of each person. The documents in front of you contain detailed information about both our side and the enemy, including various types of battleships and weapons, as well as the actions of the Moro fleet after they arrived in the solar system. Everyone's eyes lit up, and they eagerly started reading. Wormholes, real-time gravitational wave detector monitoring of spaceship movements, data of different types of warships, particle black holes, and more. Each piece of content was engrossing to them. A ship self-destructing with a particle black hole collapse bomb can blow up an entire planet. This tactic is terrifying. The energy conversion efficiency of a particle black hole is 20 times that of third-generation nuclear fusion. Colonel Chu was somewhat shocked. They on the Earth had not even researched first-generation nuclear fusion yet, and their enemies and the Panga civilization had already surpassed nuclear fusion, entering a new field. The Moro fleet is smaller than imagined, with only 100 or so ships, and 10 have already been destroyed. Colonel Chu couldn't help asking, "May I know, what is the level of our Pangu civilization's technology?" "I don't know." Zhao Yu shook his head, saying, "The Panga civilization is very far from our solar system. Even using wormholes to cross the distance takes a long time. Distant water can't put out a nearby fire. We have to handle the Moro fleet ourselves." Remembering the speed changes of the lunar spaceships several trips to and from the Earth, Colonel Chu couldn't help asking. One noticed that when the spaceship first appeared, it seemed to only be equipped with second-generation nuclear fusion. It was later upgraded gradually. What's the reason for this? It's because the technology provided by the Panga civilization takes time to be transformed into technological products. Not wanting to stir up too many speculations, Zhao Yu left it at that and continued. The technological level of the Moro fleet is roughly 2.7. While our moon is just beginning to reach the 2.0 level. With the system in place, the technological level of his base was sure to keep rising. This is why he didn't set a limit for the Panga civilization, which made it easier to explain. Compared to him owning a base that could be upgraded, it was much more intimidating to have an entire Panga civilization backing him up. It deterred others from getting any wrong ideas. After all, if he had a base on his own, someone might get tempted. But with the entire Panga civilization behind him, no one would dare to harbor any ill thoughts. They would only fear the strength of the Panga civilization. While Colonel Chu and the others were checking the data and asking about the Moro fleet, Zhao Yu answered all their questions. An hour later, seeing that everyone had a good understanding of both sides, Zhao Yu finally asked, "What are your thoughts on this war?" "I'd like to make a simple analysis of the situation." Colonel Chu was the first to speak. Their invitation to participate in the war from the moon side was a breakthrough. He had to seize it. Zhao Yu nodded. Go ahead. The current situation is that the enemy is mainly attacking, and we are mainly defending. The enemy has 93 warships left, some stationed near the wormhole in Pluto, and some in the asteroid belt between Mars and Jupiter. We have over 220,000 warships. In terms of warships, both sides are of equal speed. Our attack methods are slightly inferior, but most of the attacks can be intercepted. The only dangerous attack is the particle singularity collapse bomb. And the particle singularity collapse bomb can only be launched by a spaceship at close range. This means we can't let them break through to within 500,000 kilometers of the Earth. Colonel Chu paused and counter-questioned, what is our warship production speed? Zhao Yu thought for a moment, feeling that this was not a secret, and said, given sufficient resources, we can produce about 10,000 warships a day. Compared to before, the production rate has increased again. Uncle Da has been continuously expanding the production line during this time. Colonel Chu nodded. Now, the enemy has 3 advantages. First, they come from other galaxies, and what has arrived in the solar system is just a Moro fleet, which is relatively flexible. Second, they have a powerful weapon, the particle singularity collapse bomb. Other than keeping their ships behind the safety line, there is no other way to intercept this kind of attack. Third, their energy conversion efficiency is 20 times higher than ours. The same attack, whether in terms of power or energy consumption, is much better than ours. We also have 2 advantages. First, we hold the Earth and the Moon, have a lot of supplies and warship manufacturing production lines. Our supply situation is much stronger than theirs. As he said this, Colonel Chu asked again, are our spaceships controlled by robots? Having seen the previous data, he had a hunch that all the spaceships might not have any living people in them, but were controlled by robots. That's right. All the warships are currently controlled by robots. Zhao Yu nodded. So, our second advantage is that we can exchange pawns. Use our robot-controlled ships to take out their warships. Colonel Chu smiled and said, high energy conversion efficiency does not mean that their ships do not need resources at all. So, my idea is to send a fleet equipped with the latest type of propulsion system to take the initiative and carry out harassing operations. Harassment operations? Zhao Yu became interested and quickly asked for details. Colonel Chu nodded. No matter what raw materials the enemy's particle black hole transformation needs, the fuel carried on their supply ships must be limited. They must replenish from planets within the solar system. So, we can send warships away from the Mars defensive line. Some go to Pluto to harass their rear. Some go to the asteroid belt between Mars and Jupiter to harass their temporary base. Our attacks, whether they evade or intercept, will consume energy. When the energy is about to be exhausted, they must replenish. To replenish, they need to enter an asteroid or a planet and set up a temporary defensive base. At that time, we can use our advantage of having more warships to bombard them continuously. In this way, the enemy must be unable to attack with full force. They need to split forces and focus to deal with the harassment troops. Zhao Yu thought carefully and felt that it was indeed a viable plan. The speed of the ships on both sides is now comparable. As long as a safe distance is maintained, the enemy cannot do anything to his ship. In the cosmic environment, according to the means currently revealed by the enemy, our fleet can evade or intercept regular attacks. To destroy our fleet, they need their shuttle ships to approach within 500,000 kilometers of our fleet and self-destruct. So, we don't need many harassment troops. Each fleet only needs 50 warships. They are flexible and don't need to worry that the enemy will sacrifice a shuttle ship to wipe out the fleet. 50 warships for one of their shuttle ships, I think it's worth it. After all, their total number of ships is only 93. Besides, they have shuttle ships, so do we. If the speeds are not much different, we can completely let 5 of our shuttle ships collide with one of their shuttle ships. Most importantly, we are not afraid of sacrifice, but they are. In this way, they will inevitably hesitate, and it won't be long before they will have to retreat. There are still many points that need to be supplemented in this strategy, such as whether the enemy has backup troops, whether the enemy will also use robots, or if they have more powerful weapons, etc. But now is not the time to discuss these. Very well, let's do as you say. A smile appeared on Zhao Yu's face. He hadn't thought of all these before. Now it seemed that bringing a group of wise advisors from the earth was the right decision. After Zhao Yu finished speaking, he counted the number of people again. There were 19 advisors in total. He said, "So, you divide yourselves into 3 shifts to ensure there are people in this command center at all times. At other times, you can move freely." Then, he looked at Colonel Chu, pronounced a surname, and drew out a long sound, not knowing what to call him. "My name is Colonel Chu." Colonel Chu explained, "My father struggled in the army for a lifetime, barely reaching the rank of colonel before he died without advancing any further. When I was born, he named me colonel in hope that I could make up for his regrets." Zhao Yu nodded slightly. "In that case, Colonel Chu, you are in charge of arranging the work times for the others. Also, there are 20 maglev cars parked downstairs. You can drive them to the houses in Moon and City to rest. The access has been granted." After saying this, Zhao Yu hurriedly left to return to the lunar base. He followed the plan provided by Colonel Chu and asked Uncle Da to reproduce warships proportionately. After Zhao Yu left, Colonel Chu and the others began to wander around the command center. "Senator Chu, come and look. This is a gravitational wave detector. I can already see the warships on the Mars defense line." After a round, they found that apart from being unstaffed, the command center had all the facilities one could expect. It was not only able to detect the situation on the Mars defense line, but it could also see the enemy fleet far away in Pluto clearly. Gravitational wave detector, real-time detection. This is too magical. Colonel Chu quickly familiarized himself with the equipment and divided the people into 3 groups according to what Zhao Yu had said. They worked on an 8-hour shift system, ensuring there were people in the command center at all times. Group 1, stay with me. Groups 2 and 3 can rest. You can stay in the dormitory or go to Yuean City. You are free to do what you want. Captain, even if we are to go and support the front line, we can't leave the mothership here alone. Yes, the mothership is our core. We can't do without an escort fleet. No need. Moro shook his head. The enemy can't leave the Pluto line now. You go and support the front line. Just act according to my plan. Seeing his determined attitude, the others stopped persuading him. They each returned to their ships and slowly moved away from Pluto. Except for the mothership, all 32 warships took off together, heading towards the asteroid belt between Mars and Jupiter. "Commander, good news? Captain Moro has asked the other 3 fleets to come and support us. They have already set off and are expected to arrive in 24 days. Great." Seth nodded, excited. "You all saw the captain's plan. This time, we can take the Earth. It can surely happen. Now, just wait for them to arrive, and it will be the end for the Panga civilization." Miro seemed a little worried. "Won't my brother be in danger sending all the fleets away?" Miro is worrying too much. The mothership's combat power is not weak. Moreover, Captain Moro is near the wormhole. Even if anything happens, they can withdraw in time. 7 days later. The lunar base. After a week of production, 70,000 of the latest type of warships were neatly parked together. "Commander, 70,000 warships are divided into 1,400 formations, each with 50 warships." Uncle De reported in front of the warship to Zhao Yu. 1,100 fleets are heading to the asteroid belt, and 300 fleets are heading to Pluto. The program for each fleet has also been set. The fleet heading to Pluto will be stationed near Neptune and take turns attacking the enemy mothership. The fleet heading to the asteroid belt will return to the first defense line for supply when the energy is left at 10%. Once the fleet leaves the first defense line, it will be difficult to control it. It can only operate according to the preset program. It took Uncle Da's computing power a full week to set everything up. Zhao Yu nodded and said with satisfaction, "You did well, now let's get going." With Zhao Yu's command, the 70,000 warships rose into the sky together, heading towards the Mars defense line. Report, detected 70,000 warships leaving the enemy lunar military base and heading to the Pluto line. As soon as Zhao Yu made a move, Seth detected it. This time, they no longer conceal the speed of their ships. Every warship is heading to the Pluto line at a speed of 19,000 605 nanogs. Expected to reach the front line in 4 hours. They reinforced again. The faces of Seth and his men were serious. The enemy's production line is too strong. In such a short time, they have added another 70,000 warships. We had just destroyed more than 30,000 warships last time, and they have replenished them all at once. Lately, they have strictly followed Moro's instructions to maintain the gap near the Pluto line and prevented the enemy from repairing it successfully. But now, with the addition of the new 70,000 warships, it will be difficult to hold the gap. Commander, I just calculated, with these 70,000 warships added, it will be difficult for us to maintain the gap. We must hold on. Seth firmly said, the support troops will arrive in 17 days. Before they get here, even if we exhaust the resources reserved during this period, we must hold on. The 70,000 warships sent by Zhao Yu brought a lot of pressure to the front line, especially since the enemy was no longer pretending, and each warship was very fast. The previous situation, where a few random attacks could destroy a warship, rarely happened anymore. Just when Seth and his men thought that the 70,000 warships were supporting the Pluto line, the content displayed by the detection equipment left them somewhat stunned. According to the detection, not all of the 70,000 warships are heading to the Pluto line. Only 5,000 have gone to the Pluto line. The majority have gone to 4 other nearby enemy military bases. They have long been clear that there are 12 military bases in total on the entire Mars orbit defense line. Now, both sides have basically given up the desire to attack from other points due to the gravitational wave detector. 70,000 warships scattered and heading to other bases immediately made Seth vigilant. Keep monitoring and send this information back to the mothership. 4 hours later. Commander, something's wrong? The enemy's warships have left the defense line.
What?
Seth was shocked and quickly stepped forward to check. On the screens monitoring the military bases within the Mars defense line, 70,000 warships all left the line at once. Where are they going? This is the first time they have left the line in so many days. The team leaders began to discuss amongst themselves. Soon, someone calculated the trajectory of the 70,000 warships. Leader, over half of these 70,000 warships are heading towards our temporary base. The rest are avoiding the asteroid belt and choosing a higher dimension, seemingly intending to go around to Pluto. What? Miro was startled. We can't let them go to Pluto. The mothership is there. Phi exclaimed in alarm. Quick, dispatch a fleet to intercept. We can't let them leave. The other leaders looked at each other, unsure whether to intercept or continue following Moro's original plan in the face of this sudden situation. Compared to the mothership, Seth was more concerned about the more than 50,000 warships heading their way. We don't have time to intercept them. Our priority now is to deal with these 50,000 warships. Before Seth could finish, Miro started shouting, My brother is still on the mothership. The captain is in danger. Can't you see that? Seth frowned and said in a firm voice, There are only a little over 10,000 warships that seem to be going for the mothership. Even if they are heading to Pluto, it would take more than 20 days. The mothership would respond once they notice. Besides, there are 3 other fleets on the way. Right now, we should be the ones feeling threatened. If these 50,000 warships have the same level of technology as ours, if just one of them gets within 500,000 kilometers of us, we're done? Seth didn't bother explaining further to Miro. He directly gave the order, Notify the ground. All personnel quickly board the ship. We leave in 3 minutes. Their current location was on a small asteroid near Mars in the asteroid belt where a complete mining area had been established. But now, they could only abandon this base. Leader, are we not going to defend? Defend what? If the enemy's warships are on par with ours, do you want to defend with your head? Seth cursed impatiently. He had never thought that the enemy would leave the line to counterattack. But the captain ordered us to stay here. Stop the nonsense. Even if the captain was here now, he would make the same decision as me. Now, I am issuing an order as the leader. Everyone prepare to retreat quickly. With that, he didn't say anything more. He directly left the base and boarded the command ship not far away. Seeing this, the others hesitated for a moment, but still followed. Compared to Moro's orders, it was clearly more important to save their own lives. Moreover, even if Moro blamed them, it was Seth's order. They were just following orders. Captain, this is bad. 70,000 enemy warships have left the line. 55,000 warships are going after the Vanguard Legion, and another 15,000 warships have bypassed them, heading for Pluto. Looking at the screen filled with enemy warships, Moro felt overwhelmed. In the plan given by Oda, there was no contingency for the enemy leaving their line. The main reason was that when Oda woke up, the enemy's warship speed hadn't been revealed. In a much lower situation than them, leaving meant becoming easy targets. But now, the speed of the enemy's warships was comparable to theirs, making it difficult to destroy them easily. After pondering for a moment, Moro commanded in a deep voice, "Send orders to the support units, let them take a detour. Let those 15,000 warships through, and let them focus on executing the plan. Also, send orders to Seth to abandon their base, preserve their strength fully, and execute the plan as soon as the support units arrive." Not long after the orders were issued, someone reported, "Captain, the 6 fleets led by Seth have all left their station and have retreated." Very good. Moro nodded in satisfaction. This kid Seth is not bad. Even at light speed, it would take 6.5 hours to reach from Pluto to the Vanguard station. Seth had reacted as soon as their orders were issued, clearly thinking along the same lines as him and making a decision. "Captain, if the support units disregard our orders, are we going to face those 15,000 warships alone? Would it be?" Moro paused for 2 seconds, then said, "Deploy a batch of robots, increase mining efforts, and defend the Pluto mining area before the enemy warships arrive." In just a few minutes, he understood the advantages and disadvantages of both sides. He knew that once they get closely tangled with the enemy's 15,000 fleets, it would be difficult to mine. As for annihilating the enemy, it would consume too much, and it also seemed unrealistic. A day later, Boom tilde. An asteroid was moving in space when it was suddenly hit by a stray bullet. It exploded instantly, turning into countless fragments. Not far from the asteroid was the 9th Fleet, composed of 10 warships. At this moment, every crew member in the fleet was written with exhaustion on their face. "Captain, our energy consumption is high. In just one day, 10 warships have on average consumed 10% of their energy. At this rate, we'll die here before the support units even arrive." The fleet commander was overwhelmed and quickly asked, "How is the battle situation?" "We've destroyed a total of 122 warships. The enemy ships still chasing us number 7878. What about the other fleets?" "They're all more or less in the same situation. We have the fewest enemy ships chasing us. The fleet where Commander Seth is located is surrounded by tens of thousands of enemy warships." The fleet commander gritted his teeth. "Send the situation to the command ship. Inform the other warships to conserve firepower. Try to avoid battle." In the beginning, they were very enthusiastic in the fight. Despite being blocked and surrounded by the enemy, they continuously counterattacked, achieving significant results. In one day, the enemy lost over 1,000 warships, while none of theirs were destroyed. It seemed like a big victory, but when comparing the number of warships on both sides and the remaining fuel reserves, they would be depleted within 10 days at most. "Commander Seth, the other 5 teams have sent messages, saying that the energy reserves are dropping fast, asking us to think of a solution. Damn it, what can I do?" After a day of fighting, Seth, who had been excited at first, gradually became irritable. There were just too many enemy warships. They were like mice, hiding and dodging. They had to avoid long-range attacks and calculate trajectories to prevent being surrounded by the enemy. Milo, on the other hand, was much calmer. "You are the commander. If even you don't know what to do, what about the others?" "This fellow." Seth's teeth ached, but those words made him calm down. Leaving the bridge to others, he pondered alone for a long time before speaking. "The support unit will arrive in 16 days. Given the current situation, we will run out of energy in 10 days at most. Given the extent of the enemy's pursuit and blockade, we have no way to get resources from planets to replenish fuel. We can only think of ways to save fuel." At this point, Milo suddenly suggested, "Why don't we sacrifice some shuttle ships and blow them up?" "Sacrifice shuttle ships." Seth frowned slightly, pondering its feasibility. The only thing that reassured them after a day was that the enemy's attack was not strong. It seemed that their energy conversion system was still mainly nuclear fusion, and they had not used particle black hole mutation. This also meant that enemy warships are unlikely to use particle singularity collapse. Of course, they didn't dare to be careless, always assuming the enemy was disguising, maintaining a distance of over 500,000 kilometers. Calculate how many enemy warships we can destroy at most by sacrificing shuttle ships. Seth, in the end, could not resist this tempting plan. Almost an hour passed before he got an answer. Commander, according to calculations, one shuttle ship can destroy at most 100 enemy warships. What? Seth was shocked and somewhat incredulous. He quickly asked for clarification. It seems that the enemy's warships are strictly following some command. Each fleet of 50 warships, whether pursuing or blockading, maintains a distance of 500,000 kilometers from us. Moreover, the most frightening thing is that there is a distance of over 213,500 kilometers between their two fleets. This distance is just right for the enemy's rear fleet to launch shuttle ships to intercept our shuttle ships. Milo began to count on his fingers. 1 for 100, we have 60 now, which can exchange for 6,000 enemy warships. It's no good. There are over 53,000 enemy warships left. Even if we put all in, we can only destroy a part. This is a premeditated attack by the enemy. At this point, Seth clearly understood that the enemy had deployed a combat plan specifically based on their situation. Fighting, we can't finish them off, and we can't escape either. What should we do now? Why don't we retreat through the wormhole? The ship became chaotic. The crew members were somewhat panicked and began to talk loudly. Seth took a deep breath, slowly saying, "Notify everyone to cease fire completely. From now on, only dodge, don't counterattack." What? Milo looked at him in disbelief, questioning, "The enemy's technology is clearly inferior to ours, and we just let them suppress us? What else can we do?" Seth reluctantly said, "Right now, preserving energy and saving fuel is the key. We can only wait for the support unit to arrive, the day the plan begins." Seth was full of confidence in the captain's plan, firmly saying, "Trust me, by that time, the Earth will be doomed, and this damn Panga civilization will be wiped out." 5 days later. "Commander, the enemy has retreated to the vicinity of Jupiter." Uncle Des seemed a little relieved. "Our strategists are still quite useful. Our offensive has not only driven back the enemy, but also patched up the gap in our first line of defense." Zhao Yu nodded and smiled, saying, "Given the current situation, they should run out of fuel in a few days." According to Colonel Chu's analysis, the enemy would have two possible responses in this situation. First, they might risk everything and launch a final counterattack. Second, they might choose to withdraw from the solar system. Yes, it won't be long before we're safe. Uncle De thought for a moment, then relayed recent changes on Earth. "Commander, there have been some movements on Earth as well. What's happening there?" "The currencies in all regions of Earth have now been issued in high-denomination bills. Moreover, all major banks have started to flood the market with money, providing large-scale subsidies to the public and directly handing out cash." "What does this mean?" Zhao Yu was taken aback. Realizing that Uncle De didn't have an answer, he decided to leave the base and head to the command center to ask Colonel Chu what these movements on Earth meant. Earth currently has over 200 types of currencies, which complicates transactions. They plan to induce inflation, scrap all existing currencies, and introduce a new one. Colonel Chu paused, then added, "The idea of Desya is to unify the global currency, language, measurements, and so on. Earth is now suffering from serious internal friction. The majority of people's jobs are meaningless and merely exist to maintain stability. This is not beneficial for the development of civilization. Last week, the biotech technology you traded with Earth led to a tenfold increase in food production. Now, they have a foundation for a harmonious society. So, they're aiming to use this opportunity to initiate a transformation, eliminating meaningless jobs, expanding welfare systems, and guiding all of humanity to work towards advancing civilization." Zhao Yu nodded slightly. "That's good news. They can borrow the 1 million robots from Blue Moon if needed." Thank you, Commander. With the aid of 1 million robots, the reforms would be much easier to implement. Colonel Chu, greatly pleased, thanked him promptly. While these words seemed simple, the process was proving to be quite challenging on Earth. The main obstacle was the entrenched interest groups. Their greatest wealth was the poor, and social change threatened to cut off their means to wield power. Especially, Earth intended to eliminate the wealth gap through inflation. Consider this. Zhang San has 1 billion, and Li Si has 100,000. If everyone gets 100 million, Zhang San's wealth increases by 1/10, whereas Li Si's wealth increases 1,000 times. Zhang San's total wealth would be 1.1 billion, while Li Si's wealth would become 100 million. The wealth gap, initially 10,000 times, would shrink to 10 times. Finally, when the time was right, they would replace the existing currency with a new one under a new system. Captain, Leader Seth's fleet has retreated to the vicinity of Jupiter. Captain, Leader Seth has sent a message. It seems that the enemy's ships are controlled by robots. He's requesting to use the robot's source code. Aboard the mothership, Seth constantly examined the star map, his eyebrows tightly knitted. The robot's source code, according to Auda's plan, should be held back until the final assault. If it was used now, it could alert the enemy, leading them to take some countermeasures. However, without using the robot's source code, they couldn't proceed to the second step of their plan. To blow up the Jupiter, they needed to drop support troops as they passed by the planet. Furthermore, they needed to install large electromagnetic interference devices in the asteroid belt. There was also the 4th-generation Star Destroyer cannon, which also had to be installed in the asteroid belt. Besides, Seth's fleet was getting farther and farther from the planned location and actual attack point in the plan. If this continued, let alone the matter of revealing the robot's source code or not, Auda's plan would not be achievable at all. Moro was somewhat helpless. The battlefield was always changing. Auda's plans had seemed flawless when he was around. But now, Moro had no choice but to expose the robot's source code as a means of attack. Shaking his head, Moro decided not to dwell on it and said, "Give the order. Use the renegade robot source code. Let's kick these robots out." The Glen civilization had experienced a robot rebellion. They had various types of robot source codes, one of which was the renegade prototype that led a group of robots to escape from human civilization and head towards the desolate cosmos. Unfortunately, their technology wasn't advanced enough at the time of their rebellion to develop wormholes, so they had to escape to the neighboring galaxy by flight. Eventually, using wormhole jumps, the Glen civilization laid an early ambush. When the renegade robots, who had been flying for over 500 years, arrived in the neighboring galaxy, they were caught. When will this ever end? Seth's face showed extreme fatigue. These days, under the pursuit of tens of thousands of warships, their fleet was always on the move, constantly dodging. Every crew member only had 3 hours of rest each day. Seth himself barely slept, relying on injections to keep himself awake. Seeing no one responding, Seth looked around the room. He found everyone looking downhearted, staring blankly at their workstations, with no desire to respond.
Ah!
Seth sighed deeply. In the battlefield, fleeing was always demoralizing. They had been on the run for almost 10 days, and as fuel became increasingly scarce, the crew's morale had hit rock bottom. Beep, beep. Just as Seth was feeling dejected, a message finally came from the mothership. He hurriedly opened and read it. "This is Captain Moro. I'm authorizing the use of the Renegade source code to the Vanguard fleet for an attack on the enemy's warships." Seth was overjoyed and promptly announced the good news. "Guys, the captain has allowed us to use the source code." However, everyone was unmoved, their minds not functioning well due to chronic sleep deprivation. Seth quickly added, "We're about to win. Soon we won't have to run anymore, and everyone will be able to sleep." Only then did everyone slowly come to their senses, but there were still no smiles on their faces. Lack of sleep over a long time severely affects one's spirit, emotional control, and judgment. Seth didn't say much else, and directly ordered the other fleets to use the Renegade source code against the enemy warships pursuing them. Outside Jupiter, tens of thousands of warships swarmed back and forth, chasing and blocking Seth's fleeing fleet. Sizzle! At that moment, an electromagnetic signal suddenly burst from Seth's fleet, shooting directly towards the pursuing fleet behind. In just an instant, over 1,000 warships that were close and received the signal slowed down and stopped in the middle of the universe. As time passed, more and more warships came to a halt. After 30 seconds, all 50,000 pursuing warships had stopped. Another minute passed, and the more than 50,000 warships seemed to have snapped out of it. This time, they didn't chase after Seth's fleet, but instead headed towards Neptune. At this moment, Neptune, Pluto, and Mars formed a triangle. Heading towards Neptune meant not wanting to be involved in the war. The awakened, renegade robots seemed to want to stay at Neptune. Or maybe they intended to escape the solar system from Neptune, fleeing into the universe. Yuan City. In a restaurant, Zhao Yu was eating when suddenly, two figures approached his table. Zhao Yu looked up to see two brightly dressed women, one of whom was his old classmate, He Jingxian. It really is you, He Jingxian said with delight. I didn't expect to meet you here. Zhao Yu was surprised. Isn't your family quite wealthy? Why did you come to Yuan City? As far as he knew, most of the first batch of immigrants to Yuan City were ordinary people who had no opportunities back on Earth, so they came here. It seemed unusual for someone like He Jingxian, a second-generation rich kid, to be here. He Jingxian sighed. I am a woman after all. My family used the excuse of development to send me here. The family business has been taken over by my cousin. As she spoke, she quickly introduced the woman next to her. This is my neighbor, Zhang Yi, and this is Zhao Yu, my university classmate. Zhang Yi glanced up and down at Zhao Yu. He seemed ordinary enough, so she didn't think much of it and simply got to know him. He Jingxian, of course, knew Zhao Yu wasn't so simple. The fact that Zhao Yu could represent Blue Moon technology at the ribbon cutting last time was evidence enough. She was not shy and directly pulled Zhang Yi to sit across the table from Zhao Yu. Hey, Zhao Yu, you used to work at Blue Moon Technology too, and now I do as well. We're colleagues, aren't we? Zhao Yu smiled and casually replied, I guess so. Zhang Yi looked a bit surprised. She and He Jingxian were among the first immigrants and were among the first to join Blue Moon Technology. Zhao Yu started even earlier than them. Could it be that he had already joined the company before the migration? Just then, Zhao Yu's wristwatch suddenly rang. He glanced at it and saw it was Uncle Da. He stood up and said, I'm sorry, I have something else to take care of, so I'll be going. Seeing this, He Jingxian quickly said, could we exchange contact information? Sure. Zhao Yu added her contact and then turned to leave. Once he was gone, Zhang Yi curiously asked, He Jingxian, your classmate also works at the company? What does he do? How come I've never seen him before? He Jingxian mysteriously smiled and showed Zhang Yi a video. The ribbon-cutting ceremony? Wasn't that a long time ago? As Zhang Yi was talking, she suddenly widened her eyes. On the screen was a man who looked exactly like Zhao Yu, who they had just met. What shocked her even more was that Zhao Yu was seated in the main position, next to the well-known Senator Chu. Who exactly is he? I'm not sure, but he's definitely a senior executive at Blue Moon Technology. He Jingxian looked through the window at Zhao Yu as he boarded the magnetic levitation car to leave, a hint of ambition in her eyes. My opportunity has arrived. She was a workaholic, with high ambitions in her career. Since being sent to Yuan City by her family, she had been working hard nonstop. In just a few months, she had already become the head of a subsidiary company of Blue Moon Technology. Seeing Zhao Yu again now, she suddenly realized that she could use this opportunity to advance even further. Uncle Da, what's going on? Inside the magnetic levitation car, Zhao Yu asked anxiously. It was rare for Uncle Da to message him during a meal. Usually it only happened when something serious was happening. Uncle Da replied solemnly, Our spaceship has gone. Gone? Zhao Yu was startled and confused. What do you mean? Uncle Da projected a star map, showing tens of thousands of warships racing in the same direction in space. More than 50,000 of our warships attacking the enemy suddenly stopped their attack at almost the same time, and not long after, they turned. Looking at the situation on the screen, Zhao Yu was bewildered. What's going on? I don't know. Uncle Da shook his head. In the program I set, there is no such thing. Moreover, 3 hours after their escape, the 15,000 warships heading to Pluto also experienced a similar situation. I suspect the Moro fleet might have tampered with something, but one don't know how they did it. Soon, Zhao Yu returned to the base in the car. He discussed with Uncle Da for a long time, but they couldn't find an answer. With no other choice, he had to go to the command center again. As soon as he arrived, he saw Colonel Chu standing at the door, hurrying to greet him. "Commander, did you give any other instructions to the fleet chasing the enemy?"
No.
Zhao Yu shook his head. In the instructions given to these robots, there is no such situation now. As they walked and talked, they soon arrived at the command room. "According to your description, I suspect that the robots on our warships might have awakened." Colonel Chu made a startling analysis. "I have studied the trajectory of our ships after the anomaly. They didn't malfunction. They even destroyed a small asteroid in their way. Besides, their formation is intact, which doesn't resemble a malfunction." Zhao Yu frowned. Can robots really awaken? He had only seen such a thing in science fiction movies. Does it really exist in reality? Very likely. Colonel Chu said seriously. According to research, the enemy's warships seem to be controlled by humans, not robots. This Moro fleet, as you said, has a civilization level of about 2.7, so their development of robots should be good. But why didn't they use robots on a large scale? So, I suspect that when robots develop to a certain stage, they will awaken themselves, which is why the Moro fleet only has 100 warships and dare not use robots on a large scale. Zhao Yu frowned. This was exactly what he didn't understand. Because the Moro fleet came here with too few spaceships, only 103, they've been in the solar system for 3 or 4 months now, but they haven't shown any intention to build a base for mass-producing soldiers. If he were to invade another galaxy, he would definitely use local resources, colonize a planet first, then mass-produce soldiers, and finally attack. So, you mean, the robot's awakening was caused by the Moro fleet? The possibility is extremely high. Colonel Chu nodded. According to my observations, the 15,000 warships going to Pluto had a similar reaction at 3 hours, 12 minutes 55 seconds. I did a simple calculation. This time just happens to be when light reaches Pluto. It is very likely that their mothership released some kind of signal that could awaken the robots. Zhao Yu was astounded. They even have this kind of means? Most of the ships under his command were controlled by robots. If the enemy could really make the robots awaken, it would be a major problem. Colonel Chu said solemnly, "Now, the most important thing is to be careful that they send that robot awakening thing to our base." Did you hear all what Colonel Chu said? I heard it. Uncle Da nodded. He had been monitoring the command center and naturally heard their conversation. Well, what do you think? Before coming here, Zhao Yu had specifically visited the base control center to ask if there was any possibility of defection from Uncle Da and others. The answer he received reassured him somewhat. At a level 1 base, there were 10 bound robots, guaranteed to be absolutely loyal. Now that the base had upgraded to level 2, the quota increased from 10 to 100, which meant he could contract with 90 more people. After thinking for a moment, Uncle Da said, "I think Colonel Chu's guess is very likely." One also calculated the trajectory of the out-of-control spaceships. It doesn't look like a malfunction. The possibility of robots awakening is high. I'm thinking, why not upgrade the mainframes for people like Li Zhongheng? What do you mean? My mainframe is a supercomputer inside the moon base. Even if the enemy sends something that can awaken robots, I can still control the situation. Uncle Da said seriously, "People like Li Zhongheng are absolutely loyal to you, Commander. We can upgrade their mainframes, move them to a mothership, and then dispatch them to various military bases. In this way, we can prevent the first line of defense from failing. However, there are only 9 of them, and we have 12 military bases." Zhao Yu thought for a moment and explained that he could still contract with 90 more people. Uncle Da sighed with relief. "That way, there won't be a problem." Zhao Yu nodded and said, "Then you go ahead and create 5 more third-generation robots, and also install the mainframes on the motherships. The 2 additional robots, Zhao Yu planned to have them lead the fleet, leave the defense line, and probe further." "Sister He, are you trying to chase Zhao Yu?" Zhang Yi asked jokingly, looking at the meticulously dressed He Jingxian.
Yes.
To her surprise, He Jingxian agreed readily. This society is too unfriendly to women. If I want to keep getting promoted, the effort required is more than 10 times that of men. He Jingxian felt a pain in her heart. Several times, her performance was pretty good, but the higher-ups didn't promote her. Instead, they promoted several other men. In between, some bosses subtly suggested that she could be promoted if she was willing to accept the unspoken rules. But she refused, of course. In one's life, there are only 3 chances to change fate. I've missed 2, one can't miss the third one. Now, He Jingxian had come to a realization. Rather than benefiting those old men in the future, she'd better find a man who is high-ranking and can greatly help her career. Zhao Yu not only has the relationship as a classmate, but his position in Blue Moon Tech is also not low. With his help, her career will definitely progress further. Beep. Just as Zhao Yu walked into the combat command, his watch rang. He looked down to see a message from He Jingxian, asking if he was free tonight for dinner. I'm busy today, maybe some other time. Zhao Yu replied casually and entered the command room. Inside, Colonel Chu and others were discussing something. Seeing Zhao Yu come in, they quickly came over. Commander, we have a thought? Speak. If it's true that robots have rebelled, our base will become very unsafe. So, I'm thinking, why not set up a training camp to train soldiers who can drive warships? Zhao Yu stroked his chin, pondering the feasibility of this plan. He had a total of 100 contract slots, all used to contract robots, but they were still insufficient. Indeed, there was a need for some spaceships controlled by living people. Okay, I'll build a warship driving training camp on the moon. You choose people from Earth. Colonel Chu was delighted. Then he continued, also, I suggest building another laser defense system. Build another one? Zhao Yu was stunned. In Uncle Da's previous plan, there were 2 defense lines, but due to limited resources, only one was built. Yes, the Mars defense line is too big. It should have consumed a lot of resources. My idea is, taking the orbit of the Earth and the Moon as the center, build a circular laser defense system at a distance of 500,000 kilometers from the periphery. In this way, even if the first defense line is breached, we can ensure the safety of Earth and the Moon. Zhao Yu thought for a moment. The first defense line was built when they didn't know much about the enemy. Now, he understood almost all about the technology level and weapon status of the enemy's fleet. The biggest threat to him was the collapse of the particle black hole, which was almost indefensible, and the only way was to limit the enemy ship's approach. Looking at it this way, it was indeed necessary to build another laser defense system at a distance of 500,000 kilometers from the Moon and Earth. Considering the range, it would be much smaller than the first defense line, and the resources consumed should not be too much. Zhao Yu nodded in agreement. Okay, I will arrange for the factory to build another defense line later. After talking for a while, Zhao Yu left. After he left, Colonel Chu looked around strangely and said, Did you notice that our commander seems to have a lot of authority? Initially, they thought Zhao Yu was just responsible for coordinating with them and was just a puppet on the surface, with someone else making decisions in the background. But now, he could instantly agree to establishing a military training camp and a laser defense system without asking for permission. Even what to build in the factory and the matter of the training camp can be decided by him. Is it possible that he has already been granted similar authority? After all, he returned to the base before coming here. It's also possible that the top brass of the Panga civilization had already analyzed our ideas and informed Zhao Yu in advance about the countermeasures. This surprised Colonel Chu. It suggested that the people of the Panga civilization might be even smarter than them. Sister He, why are we in a place like this? Zhang Yi was a little scared, her hands tightly gripping He Jingxuan's arm. This was a bar. In the middle of the stage, a group of young men and women were swaying under the flickering lights. He Jingxuan leaned close to her ear. The thing I want to buy can only be found here. With that, she led Zhang Yi to an empty seat, placing a small yellow flower on the table. Before long, a skinny man approached them, sitting across from them, and asked with some uncertainty, De Zhuang? It's me. He Jingxuan nodded and replied, It's a pseudonym. Is that not allowed? The man chuckled. Of course it's allowed. It's just rare to see a woman buying this kind of thing. As he spoke, he pulled out a pill from a bag he was carrying. Dissolves in water, takes effect in 3 minutes. No matter if the person is male or female, they will be immediately aroused. Before he could finish, He Jingshuan interrupted. Do you have anything in an aromatherapy form? She was worried that if it was a pill and Zhao Yu discovered it, it would be problematic. An aromatherapy version will cost a lot more. Money is not a problem. We do have. The man smiled and took out a bag of spice and said, This is a love spell incense. Have you seen the legend of Zhenhuan? Even the emperor could fall for it. Most people won't notice it. He Jingshuan nodded. This met her expectations. She countered, How can I be sure your stuff is effective? The man gave He Jingshuan a once-over, then glanced at Zhang Yi next to her. Satisfied, he nodded, Since you're women, you can take it without paying. Try it out, see if it works. Aren't you afraid we'll deny knowing you? He Jingshuan frowned. The man gave a faint smile. Well, the ones who should be afraid are you, not us. He Jingshuan seemed to understand. She nodded. In that case, 1 foot 11 inches take the love spell incense. If it works, I'll transfer the money to the account you gave me earlier. Correct. The man left the spice on the table and left. With the deal done, He Jingshuan didn't stay long. She quickly left the bar with Zhang Yi. Sister He, it's just chasing a man. Isn't this a bit too much? Once they left the noisy environment, Zhang Yi said in disbelief. I don't know how to chase men. This way is fastest. He Jingshuan also felt awkward. She had never had a boyfriend in her life. The only thing she could think of was to act first, get Zhao Yu into bed and then figure it out.